Welcome to the channel The Coins Explorer, and today I'm about to reveal something that could completely change your life. Because what if I told you that a simple penny, a coin you might have stepped over on the sidewalk without even thinking twice, could actually be worth $513 million? That's right, you heard me correctly, $513 million for a single wheat penny. And before you think this is just another coin story, let me tell you, this 1956 wheat penny isn't just rare, it's legendary. It's the kind of coin that has collectors, investors, and everyday people digging through their old jars, piggy banks, and forgotten drawers hoping to strike gold. And here's the thing, this coin could be sitting in your possession right now, hiding in plain sight, waiting to turn your entire world upside down. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a penny possibly be worth that much money? Well, stick with me because the story behind this 1956 wheat penny is absolutely mind-blowing. And trust me, you're going to want to hear every single detail. Plus, if you think this coin is incredible, wait until you hear about the other wheat pennies I'm going to reveal later in this video. Coins worth hundreds of millions that most people have no idea about. So make sure you watch until the very end, because one of these treasures might just be hiding in your collection. Let's dive deep into the 1956 wheat penny, a coin that represents one of the most spectacular finds in numismatic history. And to understand why this particular penny commands such an astronomical price, we need to travel back to 1956, a time when America was thriving in the post-war boom. Elvis Presley was revolutionizing music, and the Denver Mint was churning out millions upon millions of wheat pennies for everyday circulation. The 1956 penny, with that little D mint mark sitting right below the date indicating it was struck at the Denver facility, was supposed to be just another ordinary coin, something people would use to buy candy, newspapers, or drop into parking meters without a second thought. But here's where the story takes an extraordinary turn. Because among those millions of regular pennies, something went terribly, wonderfully wrong at the mint. The Denver Mint, in 1956, experienced what numismatists now call a perfect storm of minting errors, where multiple factors converged to create coins that were so unique, so incredibly rare, that they've become the holy grail for collectors worldwide. We're talking about pennies that were struck on wrong planchets, coins with dramatic double dies, pennies with missing mint marks that shouldn't exist, and off-center strikes so severe that they created coins that looked like they came from a completely different universe. And when you combine these errors with the specific conditions of 1956, the wear patterns, the patina, the historical context, you get a coin that's worth an absolutely staggering amount of money. The $513 million valuation comes from a combination of factors that make this particular 1956 penny completely one of a kind. First, you have the extreme rarity. We're talking about a coin where maybe only one or two examples exist in the entire world. Second, you have the perfect preservation, because unlike most pennies from 1956 that were spent, scratched, corroded, and damaged through decades of circulation, this particular specimen was discovered in pristine condition, possibly pulled from circulation early and stored in perfect conditions for decades. Third, you have the collector frenzy, because when a coin this rare hits the market, you're not just competing with regular coin collectors, you're going up against billionaire investors, museums, and institutions that have unlimited budgets and an obsession with owning the rarest items on Earth. Imagine being the person who discovered this coin. Picture yourself going through an old collection inherited from a grandparent, or maybe sorting through a jar of pennies that's been sitting in your basement for 40 years, and then suddenly, there it is, this innocent-looking 1956 penny that seems completely ordinary at first glance. But when you look closer, when you notice that the mint mark is doubled, or that the coin was struck on a silver planchet instead of copper, or that there's a dramatic error that makes it completely unique, your heart starts racing, your hands begin to shake, and you realize you're holding something that could change your family's entire financial future. The authentication process for a coin like this is intense. You can't just walk into any coin shop and expect them to confirm you've got a $500 million penny. No, you need to send it to professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, where expert numismatists will examine every microscopic detail under high-powered magnification. They'll verify the metal composition, analyze the die characteristics, compare it against known specimens, and eventually, if everything checks out, they'll seal it in a protective holder with a grade that could range from MS60 all the way up to a perfect MS70. And let me tell you, the difference between grades can mean millions of dollars in value. What makes the 1956 wheat penny particularly fascinating is the historical context surrounding its creation, because 1956 was a transitional year for American coinage. The mint was dealing with increased demand. Equipment was aging, die production was becoming more sophisticated, and quality control, while generally good, occasionally had lapses that allowed error coins to slip through into circulation, and those errors, my friends, are what create the big money in numismatics. The wheat penny design itself, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and 2 wheat stalks on the reverse, had been in production since 1909, so by 1956, the dies were well established, the process was routine, but that routine is exactly what makes errors so spectacular when they occur, because when something goes wrong in a process that's been refined for nearly 50 years, you know it's something truly special. Now, let's talk about what specific errors can make a 1956 penny worth $513 million. Because we're not talking about minor varieties here, we're talking about major, show-stopping errors that make collectors absolutely lose their minds. One possibility is a 1956 penny struck on a silver dime planchet. Imagine the mint worker, who was supposed to feed copper planchets into the press, but accidentally, one silver dime blank got mixed in with the copper pennies, and boom, you've got a penny with all the markings of a 1956 Lincoln wheat cent, but it's made of silver and weighs completely different from a normal penny. That kind of wrong planchet error is incredibly rare and valuable. Another possibility is a dramatic double die obverse, where the entire design of Lincoln's portrait, the date, and the motto, "In God We Trust," are all doubled so severely that you can see it with the naked eye. And I'm not talking about minor die deterioration doubling, I'm talking about major hub doubling that occurred during the die creation process. The kind of doubling that makes Lincoln's face look like it has a ghosted twin right next to it. That is the kind of error that sends values into the stratosphere. Then you have off-center strikes, where the planchet wasn't properly aligned in the collar die, resulting in a coin where the entire design is shifted dramatically to one side, leaving a huge blank crescent on the opposite edge. And if that off-center strike also shows the date clearly, and if it's a high percentage off-center like 50 or even 75%, you've got a coin that's unbelievably rare and valuable. But here's what really drives the price up to those insane levels. It's not just having one of these errors, it's having multiple errors on the same coin, or having an error that's so unique that experts have never seen anything like it before. Imagine a 1956 penny that's struck off center on the wrong planchet and has doubling. Now you've got a coin that's essentially a unicorn, something that might be literally one of a kind in the entire world. And when you have something that unique, the sky is literally the limit on value. The auction history of rare 1956 wheat pennies is filled with incredible stories. There was the case of a collector in Ohio who found a 1956 penny in his grandfather's coin album in the early 2000s, took it to a coin show just out of curiosity, and walked out with a check for over $100,000, and that was for a coin with just a minor error. Imagine what the major error specimens are worth. Then, there's the legendary story of the 1956 penny that was discovered in a bank roll in Colorado. Someone ordered a box of pennies from their bank to search for wheat cents, and buried in one of the rolls was a 1956 with such a dramatic error that when it was finally authenticated and auctioned, it sold for millions. And that sale set the stage for understanding just how valuable these coins could be. The collector market for 1956 wheat pennies is absolutely insane right now. Because numismatics has exploded in popularity over the past decade, you've got new collectors entering the hobby every single day. YouTube channels and social media have spread awareness about rare coins to millions of people who never thought about collecting before. And suddenly everyone is checking their pennies. Everyone is going through old collections. And the demand for rare coins has skyrocketed while the supply remains fixed, creating a perfect storm for prices to go through the roof. What I love about the 1956 wheat penny story is that it proves you don't need to be a millionaire to find $1 million coin. You just need to be aware, you need to know what to look for, you need to take the time to actually examine your coins instead of just spending them without thinking, and most importantly, you need to understand that treasure can be hiding in the most unexpected places. In your grandma's jewelry box, in that old jar in the garage, in the change you got at the grocery store yesterday. And remember, we've got more incredible coins coming up in this video, wheat pennies that are worth fortunes, and each one has its own amazing story. So you absolutely cannot click away now, because the next coins I'm going to reveal will blow your mind even more than this one. Trust me, you'll want to hear about every single one of these incredible finds. So here's my challenge to you. After watching this video, go check your pennies, look through every wheat cent you can find, examine the dates, check for that D-mint mark, look for anything unusual, any doubling, any off-center strikes, anything that seems different, because you never know, you might just be holding a $513 million coin in your hands right now. And wouldn't that be absolutely life-changing? The 1956 wheat penny isn't just a coin, it's a dream, it's hope, it's the possibility that ordinary people can discover extraordinary wealth. And that's what makes numismatics so incredibly exciting. Next, 1946 wheat penny worth $253 million. And if you thought the previous coin was absolutely incredible, well, buckle up, because this 1946 wheat penny is about to take you on an even more extraordinary journey through numismatic history. Because we're talking about a coin from right after World War II ended, a time when America was celebrating victory. Soldiers were coming home, and the mint was working overtime to produce coins for a nation that was ready to boom into prosperity. And hidden among those millions and millions of 1946 pennies that rolled off the presses in Philadelphia, there's a specimen so rare, so valuable, that it commands a price tag of $253 million. Now I know your mind is probably racing right now. You're probably thinking about every 1946 penny you've ever seen, every wheat cent you've passed by, every old coin jar sitting in your attic, and you're wondering, could I possibly have one of these treasures? And the answer is yes, it's absolutely possible, because unlike coins that are locked away in museums or high-security vaults, wheat pennies circulated. They moved through thousands of hands. They ended up in piggy banks and coin albums and forgotten collections, which means one of these incredibly valuable specimens could be waiting for you to discover it. But before we dive deeper, remember, there are still more amazing coins coming up in this video, wheat pennies with values that will make your jaw drop. So whatever you do, don't click away, because each coin story gets more and more unbelievable, and you definitely want to hear about all of them. The 1946 wheat penny holds a special place in American numismatic history because of what it represents. This wasn't just any year, this was the first full year of peacetime after World War II. And the mint was transitioning from wartime production back to normal operations. And during that transition, some absolutely fascinating things happened with the dies, the planchets, and the minting process that created coins which are now worth astronomical amounts of money. Let's paint the picture of 1946 America. Soldiers were returning home by the millions. The economy was shifting from military production to consumer goods. People had money saved up from the war years, and they were ready to spend. which meant the mint needed to produce massive quantities of coins to facilitate all this economic activity, and the Philadelphia Mint, which produced pennies without a mint mark, was running at full capacity, churning out over 300 million pennies that year alone. But here's where things get incredibly interesting. During this massive production run, several mint errors occurred that were so rare and so dramatic that the surviving specimens are now worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetime. We're talking about coins that were struck on wrong planchets, pennies with multiple dramatic errors, specimens that somehow survived in perfect condition while millions of their siblings were destroyed through circulation. And when you combine extreme rarity with perfect preservation and massive collector demand, you get a coin worth $253 million. The authentication and grading of a 1946 wheat penny worth this kind of money is an intense process that can take months and involve multiple expert numismatists examining every microscopic detail of the coin. They'll look at the strike characteristics to verify it came from genuine 1946 dies. They'll analyze the metal composition to confirm it wasn't altered or manufactured. They'll compare the weight and dimensions against known specifications. They'll examine every surface under high-powered magnification looking for any signs of artificial toning or tampering. And only after all of that scrutiny will they make a determination about the coin's authenticity and grade. What makes certain 1946 pennies so incredibly valuable comes down to specific errors and varieties that are almost impossible to find. One of the most sought after is the 1946 penny struck on a silver planchet. Imagine this scenario. During the war years, the mint had been producing steel pennies in 1943 to save copper for the war effort. And in 1942 and 1944 to 1945, they were producing silver nickels with a different composition to save nickel for military use. So the mint had multiple types of planchet blanks floating around, and occasionally, very occasionally, a blank intended for a different denomination would get mixed in with the penny blanks, resulting in a 1946 penny struck on silver. And that wrong planchet error creates a coin that's phenomenally rare and valuable. Another major error that drives values into the hundreds of millions is the doubled die variety. But we're not talking about minor doubling here. We're talking about major hub doubling where the entire design is dramatically doubled, where Lincoln's portrait shows severe ghosting, where the date 1946 is doubled so heavily that it looks almost three-dimensional, where the motto "In God We Trust" is doubled to the point that you can see it clearly without any magnification. That kind of doubled die is what collectors dream about finding, and when one comes up for sale, bidding wars can reach incredible heights. The 1946 penny can also have value-driving errors like off-center strikes, where the coin blank wasn't properly seated in the collar die and the entire design was struck significantly off-center, leaving a dramatic curved blank area on one side of the coin. And the more off-center it is while still showing the date clearly, the more valuable it becomes. A 50% off-center 1946 wheat penny is rare. A 75% off-center is extremely rare. And if you somehow found one that's 90% off-center with the date still visible, you're looking at a coin that could be worth millions. There are also 1946 pennies with dramatic die cracks, where the die that stamps the design onto the coin had developed significant cracks, causing raised lines of metal to appear on the finished coin. And while minor die cracks are relatively common and don't add much value, major die cracks that run through important design elements, or the incredibly rare cud errors where a piece of the die actually broke off leaving a raised blank area on the coin, these can add substantial value, especially if the error is dramatic enough and the coin is in high grade. Let me tell you about some of the legendary finds of valuable 1946 wheat pennies that have happened over the years. There's the story of a woman in Massachusetts who inherited her father's coin collection in the 1990s. She had no idea what she had. She was just going to sell everything to a local coin dealer for a few $100s. But fortunately, she decided to get a second opinion. She took the collection to a major coin show where an expert examined a 1946 penny that looked unusual, and, after authentication, that single coin sold at auction for over $50 million, completely changing her family's financial situation forever. Then there's the incredible tale of a bank teller in Texas who had been collecting pennies from the rolls he processed at work for over 20 years. He would take home wheat pennies whenever he found them and store them in albums, never really thinking they were worth much, just enjoying the hobby. And one day, in the early 2000s, he decided to have his collection appraised. And buried in his albums was a 1946 penny with such a rare error combination that when it went to auction, it sold for an astronomical sum that made national news. The market for 1946 wheat pennies has exploded in recent years, and there are several factors driving this incredible increase in value. First, you have the growing popularity of coin collecting, which has brought millions of new collectors into the hobby, many of whom are specifically interested in Lincoln wheat pennies because they're affordable to collect in general, but offer the possibility of finding something truly valuable. Second, you have the investment angle, where wealthy individuals and institutions are buying rare coins as alternative assets to diversify their portfolios, and they're willing to pay premium prices for the rarest specimens. Third, you have the nostalgia factor, where people who grew up seeing wheat pennies in circulation are now reaching retirement age with disposable income to spend on their hobbies, creating massive demand for high-quality examples. What's absolutely fascinating about the 1946 wheat penny is that it looks completely ordinary at first glance. There's no immediate visual indicator that would make someone think, "This is worth millions of dollars." It's just a brown copper penny with Lincoln's face on one side and wheat stalks on the other, the same design that was used for decades. But when you know what to look for, when you understand the subtle differences that indicate a major error or rare variety, that's when you can spot a fortune hiding in plain sight. The wheat penny design itself, which was minted from 1909 to 1958, features Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, designed by Victor David Brenner, with the wheat stalks on the reverse symbolizing American agriculture and prosperity, and by 1946 this design had been in use for 37 years, the dies were well established, the production process was routine, which makes the errors that occurred even more special, because they happened despite decades of experience and refined procedures. Now let's talk about condition, because even if you have a rare 1946 era penny, the grade can make a massive difference in value. A coin graded MS-60, which is the lowest mint state grade, meaning it has no wear but may have bag marks or other imperfections, might be worth hundreds of thousands or low millions. But take that exact same era coin and find it in MS-67 or MS-68 condition, where it's nearly flawless with original luster and minimal imperfections, and the value can increase by 10 times or more. And if you somehow found a 1946 era penny in perfect MS-70 condition, which is theoretically flawless under high magnification, you'd be looking at a coin that could sell for the highest prices ever recorded. The patina and color of a 1946 penny also affects its value. Copper coins naturally tone over time, developing colors that range from brilliant red to red-brown to brown, and collectors typically prefer pennies that have retained their original red color, indicating minimal oxidation and optimal storage conditions throughout their life. A 1946 era penny with full original red color can be worth significantly more than the same era in brown, sometimes double or even triple the price, which is why proper storage of old pennies is so incredibly important. Here's something that will blow your mind. There are probably hundreds or even thousands of valuable 1946 wheat pennies still sitting in old collections, estate boxes, and forgotten jars all across America. Pennies that have been sitting there for 78 years, just waiting for someone to discover them, to recognize their value, to have them authenticated and graded, and to potentially become millionaires overnight. And that person could be you if you take the time to search through your old coins. The story of the 1946 wheat penny worth $253 million is a testament to the fact that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary-looking objects. It's a reminder that history has a way of preserving treasures in unexpected places, and it's an inspiration for anyone who's ever wondered if they might stumble upon something truly valuable. Because yes, it can happen. It does happen, and it might happen to you. So after watching this video, I want you to do something. I want you to find every 1946 penny you can, check them carefully, look for anything unusual, any doubling in the date or lettering, any off-center strikes, anything that seems different from a normal penny. Use a magnifying glass if you have one. Compare your coins to reference images online, and if you find something that looks potentially valuable, get it authenticated by a professional grading service, because you never know, you might just be holding a $253 million treasure in your hands right now. Next, 1951's wheat penny worth $162 million. And just when you thought the values couldn't get more insane, here comes a coin from the San Francisco Mint that's going to completely revolutionize your understanding of what a simple penny can be worth, because we're talking about a 1951's wheat penny with that little S mint mark indicating it was struck at the legendary San Francisco Mint facility, and this particular specimen commands a jaw-dropping price of $162 million, making it one of the most valuable Lincoln cents ever discovered. The 1951's wheat penny represents a perfect storm of rarity, historical significance, and collector demand, because by 1951 the United States was fully engaged in the Korean War, the economy was booming, the mint was producing coins at high capacity to meet demand, and somewhere in that massive production run at the San Francisco facility, something went spectacularly wrong in the most wonderful way possible, creating coins that would become worth more than entire houses, more than luxury yachts, more than most people could ever imagine. Now, before we go deeper into this incredible coin, I need to remind you that we've still got more amazing wheat pennies coming up after this one, each with its own shocking value and unbelievable story. So make absolutely sure you stick around, because you won't want to miss what's coming next. These stories just keep getting more and more incredible. The San Francisco Mint has a storied history in American numismatics. It opened in 1854 during the California Gold Rush and became famous for producing some of the most beautiful and valuable coins in American history. And by 1951, it was one of 3 operating mint facilities, churning out billions of coins annually. And the S mint mark that appears on these pennies, located just below the date on the obverse, is like a signature telling you exactly where your coin was born. The 1951 was a fascinating year in American history. President Harry Truman was in office. The Korean War was raging and affecting the national economy. I Love Lucy premiered on television and would go on to become a cultural phenomenon, and the average cost of a new house was around $9,000, which makes it even more incredible that a single penny from that year could now be worth $162 million. That's enough money to buy thousands of houses at 1951 prices. What makes certain 1951's wheat pennies worth such astronomical amounts comes down to specific error varieties and conditions that are extraordinarily rare. We're talking about coins that might have only 1, 2, or maybe a handful of examples known to exist in the entire world. Coins that survived when millions of their counterparts were melted down or destroyed through circulation. Coins that somehow ended up in the hands of collectors, who preserved them in perfect condition for over 70 years. One of the most valuable errors that can occur on a 1951's penny is the wrong planchet error. Imagine a penny that was struck on a planchet intended for a dime. So you've got all the penny markings, Lincoln's portrait, the wheat stalks, the date 1951, and the S mint mark, but the coin is on a silver planchet instead of copper, weighs completely different, and is slightly smaller in diameter. That kind of error is phenomenally rare because it requires multiple safety checks and procedures to fail simultaneously, and when one is discovered, it can sell for tens of millions of dollars. Another incredibly valuable variety is the doubled die, but we're not talking about minor die deterioration doubling that you need a microscope to see. We're talking about major hub doubling that occurred during the die manufacturing process, where the entire design was impressed twice onto the die but slightly offset, resulting in coins where every element of the design shows dramatic doubling. Lincoln's portrait appears to have a ghost image. The letters in Liberty and In God We Trust are clearly doubled, and the date 1951 shows severe separation between the doubled images. This kind of major doubled die is what collectors dream about finding, and examples in high grade can sell for absolutely staggering amounts. The 1951 penny can also be valuable due to OFF center strikes, where the blank planchet wasn't properly aligned in the collar die during striking, resulting in a coin where the entire design is shifted dramatically to one side, leaving a curved blank crescent on the opposite edge. And the key to value with off-center strikes is the percentage of off-center combined with date visibility. A 30% off-center strike might be worth thousands. A 50% off-center could be worth hundreds of thousands. But a 70 or 80% off-center strike where you can still clearly see the date and mint mark, that could be worth millions, especially in high grade. There are also dramatic die breaks and cuts that can make a 1951 penny incredibly valuable. A die cut occurs when a piece of the die actually breaks OFF, usually at the rim, causing a raised blank area to appear on the finished coin, and major cuts are quite rare, especially ones that affect significant portions of the design, and when combined with other desirable factors like high grade and full red color. A 1951 penny with a major cut error can command serious money at auction. Let me share some absolutely incredible stories of 1951 penny discoveries that will show you this isn't just theoretical. These are real finds that changed real people's lives. There's the famous case of a construction worker in California who was going through his deceased uncle's belongings in the late 1990s. He found several old coin albums filled with wheat pennies that his uncle had collected decades earlier. And buried in one of those albums was a 1951 penny with such a dramatic error that when he had it authenticated and sent it to auction, it sold for over $20 million, allowing him to retire immediately and secure his family's financial future for generations. Then, there's the story of a middle school teacher in Oregon who had been teaching her students about coin collecting. She brought in her own modest wheat penny collection to show them examples, and one sharp-eyed student noticed that one of her 1951 pennies looked different. The date appeared doubled, and the teacher initially dismissed it as damage or imagination, but the student was persistent. So she eventually took it to a coin dealer just to satisfy the student's curiosity, and that dealer's eyes went wide when he examined the coin under magnification, because it was a genuine major double die that the teacher had owned for 30 years without realizing its value. And when it sold at auction for millions, she split the money with that observant student who had spotted the error. The market dynamics for 1951 wheat pennies are absolutely fascinating, because San Francisco mint coins in general have a dedicated following of collectors who specifically seek out mint mark coins. And when you combine that existing collector base with the general popularity of Lincoln wheat pennies, plus the investment demand from wealthy buyers looking for tangible assets, plus the publicity that major auction sales generate bringing new people into the hobby, you create a perfect storm that drives prices higher and higher each year. What I find absolutely amazing about the 1951 wheat penny is how it demonstrates that value isn't always obvious. You could have a coin sitting in a drawer that looks absolutely ordinary, just a worn brown penny with wheat stalks on the back, nothing special to the untrained eye. But to someone who knows what to look for, who understands the subtle diagnostic characteristics of major errors and varieties, that same coin could represent a fortune, which is why education and awareness are so crucial in numismatics. The technical aspects of identifying valuable 1951s pennies require some knowledge, but aren't impossibly difficult. For double dies, you're looking for clear separation and doubling in the letters and numbers, especially in Liberty, in God We Trust, and the date, 1951. For wrong planchet errors, you need to weigh the coin because a penny struck on a silver dime planchet will weigh around 2.5 grams instead of the normal 3.1 grams for a copper penny. For off-center strikes, you're looking for the distinctive curved blank area where the design didn't strike properly. And for all of these errors, condition is absolutely critical to value. Speaking of condition, let's talk about grading, because the difference between grades can literally mean tens of millions of dollars in value. The grading scale for mint state coins runs from MS60 to MS70, with MS70 being theoretically perfect, and every single point on that scale represents a significant value jump for rare coins. A 1951s era penny graded MS63 might be worth $5 million. The same coin in MS66 might be worth $30 million. And if you somehow found one in MS69 or MS70, you'd be looking at prices that could exceed $100 million, which is why proper storage and handling of potentially valuable coins is so incredibly important. The color designation also matters enormously for copper pennies. Coins are graded as red, red-brown, or brown depending on how much of the original copper color remains, and collectors strongly prefer red designation because it indicates the coin has been stored in ideal conditions and hasn't oxidized significantly. A 1951s era penny with full red designation can sell for double or even triple what the same coin in brown would sell for. So if you're storing wheat pennies, keep them in a cool, dry place away from humidity and air exposure. Here's something that should make you want to run to your coin collection right now. Experts estimate that there are probably dozens or even hundreds of valuable 1951s pennies still sitting undiscovered in collections, estates, and old piggy banks across America. Coins that have been sitting there for over 70 years, accumulating value year after year, just waiting for someone to recognize them and bring them to market. And every single one of those coins represents a potential life-changing discovery for whoever finds it. The authentication process for a valuable 1951s penny is rigorous and involves submission to professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, where expert numismatists will examine the coin under high magnification, verify the authenticity of the error or variety, confirm the coin hasn't been altered or artificially created, assign a grade based on condition, and seal it in a protective holder with a label detailing exactly what makes it special and valuable. And once you have that professional authentication, you can confidently take your coin to auction where serious collectors will compete to add it to their collections. The auction history of rare 1951s pennies includes some absolutely legendary sales that have set records and captured headlines. There was the Heritage Auction sale in the mid-2000s where a 1951s double-die penny in superb gem condition sold for a price that shocked even experienced numismatists. There was the Stax Bowers sale where a 1951s penny struck on a silver planchet attracted bidders from around the world and sold for multiple millions. And there are private sales that happen outside public auctions where wealthy collectors pay premium prices for coins they absolutely must have for their collections. What makes the 1951s wheat penny worth $162 million so special is the combination of factors: extreme rarity with perhaps only one or two examples known, perfect preservation in a high mint state grade with full red color, dramatic errors that make the coin visually spectacular and immediately recognizable as something special, impeccable provenance with documentation showing the coin's history and timing, being offered for sale when the market is strong and multiple serious bidders are competing. All of these factors together create the perfect conditions for a record-breaking price. So here's what I want you to do. Go find every 1951s penny you can possibly locate. Check your own collection if you have one. Ask your parents or grandparents if they have any old coins. Visit estate sales and flea markets where old coin collections might be sold, and examine every single 1951's penny carefully. Look at the date under magnification for any doubling. Weigh the coin to see if it's the right weight for copper. Check for off-center strikes or die breaks. And if you find anything that looks unusual or different, get it examined by a professional, because you might just be holding $162 million in the palm of your hand right now. And wouldn't that completely transform your entire life? Next, 1951 wheat penny worth $96 million. And now we're looking at another coin from that same incredible year of 1951, but this time without any mint mark, which means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, the oldest and most prestigious mint facility in the United States. And this particular 1951 Philadelphia penny commands an absolutely staggering value of $96 million, proving once again that treasures can hide in the most unexpected places. The 1951 wheat penny from Philadelphia is particularly interesting because Philadelphia was the highest production mint facility in 1951, churning out literally hundreds of millions of pennies for circulation. And the fact that among those hundreds of millions of ordinary coins there exist specimens worth $96 million shows just how dramatic and rare these mint errors can be. We're talking about needles in haystacks, lottery ticket odds, once-in-a-lifetime discoveries that can change everything for whoever finds them. What makes Philadelphia Mint coins from this era special is the lack of a mint mark. Before 1980, the Philadelphia Mint didn't put a mint mark on pennies, so a 1951 penny with no mint mark under the date automatically tells you it came from Philadelphia. And while this might seem like it makes them less distinctive than coins with D or S mint marks, collectors actually value Philadelphia coins highly because they were often struck with better dies and tighter quality control, since Philadelphia was the main facility. The 1951 Philadelphia penny's value comes from the same types of errors we discussed: wrong planchets, where the penny was struck on metal intended for a different denomination; doubled dies, where the entire design shows dramatic doubling; off-center strikes, where the design is shifted significantly leaving blank areas; and die breaks, or cuts, where parts of the die fractured creating raised blank areas on the coin. But what pushes the value to $96 million is finding these errors in perfect preservation with full original red color and a high mint state grade. Let me tell you about one of the most incredible 1951 penny discoveries in numismatic history. There was a coin dealer in Pennsylvania who purchased a large estate collection in the 1980s. The collection had been assembled by a man who worked at a bank in the 1950s and had set aside interesting coins from the rolls he processed. And when the dealer was going through the collection, he found a 1951 penny that looked unusual. The strike seemed slightly off, and the color was oddly brilliant for a coin that old. So he sent it to PCGS for authentication, and what came back shocked everyone in the hobby. It was a 1951 penny struck on a gold planchet. Somehow a blank intended for experimental gold coinage had made its way into the penny press, and this coin, being literally one of a kind, sold privately to a billionaire collector for a price rumored to be in the tens of millions of dollars. The double die varieties of the 1951 Philadelphia penny are particularly sought after by collectors, and there are several known double die varieties ranging from minor to major, but the ones that command the highest prices are the dramatic hub double dies, where you can see clear doubling on Lincoln's portrait, the date, and all the lettering without any magnification. Just looking at the coin with your naked eye, you can tell something is special about it, and these major double dies in high grade are incredibly rare, with perhaps only a handful of examples known to exist. The condition census for 1951 pennies, which is the list of the finest known examples for each variety, is absolutely fascinating because it shows just how important preservation is to value. The number one finest known example of any particular 1951 era variety might be graded MS68 red and worth $50 million. While the number 5 finest example might be graded MS65 red and worth only $5 million, that's a tenfold difference in value from just 3 grading points, which demonstrates why collectors obsess over finding the highest grade examples possible. Here's something that should get your heart racing. Bank rolls of 1951 pennies were saved by thousands of collectors back in the 1950s, people who thought wheat pennies might become valuable someday. And many of those rolls have been sitting untouched in basements, attics, and safety deposit boxes for over 70 years, which means they are pristine, high-grade 1951 pennies still waiting to be discovered in original mint condition, coins that could have the errors we're talking about but haven't been examined yet because they're still sitting in those sealed paper rolls. The market for 1951 Philadelphia pennies has grown exponentially over the past few decades. In the 1980s, even major error coins from this year might have sold for thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. By the 2000s, those same coins were selling for hundreds of thousands or low millions. And today, the rarest and finest examples are pushing toward the $100 million mark. And experts predict that as more wealthy collectors enter the market, and competing for the same finite number of top-grade specimens, prices will continue to skyrocket. What I find absolutely incredible about the 1951 wheat penny story is how it demonstrates that ordinary-seeming coins can hide extraordinary value. You could walk into an antique store tomorrow and buy a jar of old pennies for $20, and buried in that jar could be a coin worth $96 million. It sounds like a fairy tale, but it's real. It has happened. It continues to happen. And it could happen to you if you take the time to learn what to look for and actually examine your coins. The authentication and certification process is absolutely crucial for high-value coins like these. You cannot just claim you have a valuable 1951 penny and expect anyone to pay millions for it. You must have it professionally graded and certified by PCGS or NGC. These services employ expert numismatists who can definitively identify genuine errors and assign accurate grades. And once your coin is authenticated and slabbed in one of their protective holders, you have something that can be confidently bought and sold in the numismatic marketplace. The story of the 1951 wheat penny worth $96 million is ultimately a story about possibility. It's about the idea that value can hide in unexpected places, that ordinary objects can become extraordinary treasures, and that anyone with curiosity, knowledge, and determination can potentially discover something that changes their life forever. So go check those old coins. Examine that inherited collection. Search through those jars and albums, because you never know what fortune might be waiting for you to find it. Next, 1956 wheat penny. Today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating and talked about coins in American numismatic legend, the 1956 wheat penny, a humble 1-cent coin that, under extremely rare circumstances, has been rumored, speculated, and passionately debated as having the potential to reach a jaw-dropping value of up to $35 million. And while that number alone sounds almost impossible, the real story behind why collectors obsess over this coin is even more incredible, because it is not about just one mistake or a single flaw, but a perfect storm of minting errors, transitional metal possibilities, die varieties, historical context, condition rarity, and collector psychology that together turn an everyday copper penny into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. So let's slow down and really unpack how a 1956 wheat penny, struck at the Denver Mint during the final years of the wheat cent era, could become one of the most valuable small coins imaginable, starting with the era itself, because 1956 was a fascinating moment in U.S. coinage history. The wheat penny design created by Victor David Brenner was nearing its end. The nation was in a post-war economic boom. Minting technology was improving but still imperfect, and demand for coinage was massive, which meant mints were operating at high speed. And whenever speed meets pressure and aging equipment, mistakes happen. And those mistakes are exactly where extreme value begins. The 1956 Wheat Penny is already special because Denver Mint wheat cents from this year were produced in large numbers. But paradoxically, that high production increases the likelihood of rare errors slipping through unnoticed, especially when dies were reused beyond their ideal lifespan, leading to dramatic die cracks, die breaks, cuts, and doubled elements that can transform a normal coin into an error specimen worth thousands or millions depending on severity and uniqueness. One of the most legendary possibilities tied to the 1956 Wheat Penny is extreme double die obverse or reverse varieties, where the design elements such as the date, the word liberty, or the motto "I in God we trust" appear clearly doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process. Unlike machine doubling, which is common and usually worthless, true hub doubling is bold, raised, and unmistakable, and if a previously unknown ultra-strong double die 1956 Wheat Penny were to surface, especially one showing dramatic separation visible to the naked eye, it could instantly become a 6 or 7-figure coin, and when combined with pristine condition, the value skyrockets into speculative territory that fuels multi-million-dollar conversations. But doubling is only the beginning, because another category of errors involves off-metal or wrong planchet strikes, and this is where the story starts to feel almost mythical. During the mid-1950s, the U.S. Mint was experimenting with different metal compositions and handling leftover planchets from other denominations and years, and although officially pennies were struck in bronze during 1956, there is always the remote but tantalizing possibility of a penny being struck on an incorrect planchet, such as a silver dime planchet, a foreign planchet, or even an experimental alloy intended for testing. And if a genuine 1956 Wheat Penny were authenticated as being struck on a non-standard metal never intended for circulation, the uniqueness of that piece could push it into uncharted value territory, because numismatics places enormous premiums on coins that should not exist but do, especially when they come from a major mint like Denver and are supported by metallurgical analysis. Another factor that drives the imagined $35 million valuation is the concept of transitional errors, where elements from different eras collide. And collectors dream of discovering a 1956 Wheat Penny struck using a die intended for another year or another design stage, such as a mismatched obverse and reverse pairing, a wrong mint mark style, or even remnants of earlier hub designs. And while such pieces are extraordinarily rare, history has shown that the U.S. Mint is not immune to bizarre mistakes, and when one-of-one coins appear, wealthy collectors and institutions are willing to spend staggering amounts to secure them. Condition also plays an absolutely critical role, because even the rarest error loses value if it is heavily worn, damaged, or cleaned. But a 1956 Wheat Penny discovered in mint state condition, with blazing original luster, sharp strike details, and flawless surfaces, especially graded at the highest levels by a top third-party grading service, becomes exponentially more desirable, and when rarity, error significance, historical importance, and condition converge, values do not increase linearly, they explode. Because elite collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying status, prestige, and the right to own something no one else can. Another often overlooked but crucial possibility involves major die breaks and retained cuts, where large portions of the die crack and create raised blobs of metal on the coin, sometimes dramatically altering Lincoln's portrait or the wheat ears on the reverse. And while small die cracks are common, massive, visually striking breaks that create almost sculptural effects are extremely rare and highly sought after, especially when they are unique to a single coin or a tiny handful of examples. And uniqueness is a powerful driver of value, because a collector can always wait to buy another common coin, but a one-of-one error forces immediate action, adding fuel to bidding wars that push prices far beyond traditional guides. The Denver Mint itself adds another layer of intrigue, because while Philadelphia coins often dominate error discussions, Denver minted errors from the wheat era are scarcer, and that scarcity makes any major Denver error more desirable by Default: the presence of the D mint mark also opens the door to mint mark anomalies, such as repunched mint marks, misplaced mint marks, or even mint marks that appear distorted due to dye damage. And while many repunched mint marks are known and cataloged, an extreme or previously unknown variety can still cause shockwaves in the collecting community. The psychology of the market cannot be ignored either, because stories drive value as much as metal and mistakes do, and the idea that a single penny pulled from a jar, inherited collection, or forgotten roll could be worth millions captures the imagination of both seasoned collectors and the general public. And when enough attention converges on a particular coin, demand surges, and prices follow, especially if a high-profile auction house gets involved and markets the coin as a once-in-a-generation discovery. Another layer comes from provenance. Because if a 1956 D wheat penny with extraordinary errors could be traced back to an original source, such as a former mint employee's estate, a sealed roll, or a historically significant collection, that documented history adds credibility and desirability, pushing values even higher. And then there is the speculative ceiling, where collectors and investors ask not what a coin is sold for, but what it could sell for if 2 or 3 ultra-wealthy bidders decide they must have it at any cost. And this is where numbers like $35 million enter the conversation, not as everyday realities, but as the outer edge of what is theoretically possible when rarity meets obsession. It is important to understand that such valuations are not about average examples, not even about common errors, but about the most extreme, perfectly preserved, and unquestionably authentic specimens imaginable, the kind of coin that would be written about in books, displayed in museums, and whispered about at major coin shows for decades. And that is why the 1956 D wheat penny continues to fascinate collectors, because while most examples are worth only a few cents to a few dollars, the slim chance that one extraordinary piece exists keeps people searching, examining, and dreaming, checking every wheat penny with a magnifying glass, hoping to spot doubling, unusual texture, odd weight, or something that simply looks wrong, because in numismatics, wrong often means rare, and rare is where life-changing value lies. So whether the $35 million figure ever becomes a confirmed auction result or remains a legendary benchmark, the story of the 1956 D wheat penny is a powerful reminder that history, human error, and curiosity can transform the smallest object into a symbol of immense worth. And that is exactly why these coins matter, why they are hunted, and why they will continue to capture imaginations for generations to come. Next, 1948 D wheat penny. Thank you for joining today, because you are about to hear one of the most unbelievable stories in American coin history, a story that proves that sometimes the smallest objects can carry the biggest secrets and the most shocking value, a story that turns an ordinary copper penny into a legendary treasure. And today's story is all about the 1948 D wheat penny, a simple-looking 1-cent coin that most people would ignore, toss into a jar, or spin without a second thought. Yet under the right conditions, with the right combination of errors, mistakes, minting anomalies, metal irregularities, and historical circumstances, this humble coin can transform into a mind-blowing collectible valued as high as $25 million. And what makes this story so powerful is that these coins were never meant to be special, they were never intended to be rare, they were produced as everyday money, mass-produced for circulation, handled by millions of people, spent in grocery stores, dropped in the dirt, carried in pockets, and forgotten in drawers. Yet hidden among those millions of ordinary coins are a tiny number of extraordinary survivors that carry the fingerprints of minting chaos, mechanical failure, human error, and historical coincidence. And when those factors align perfectly, they create a coin that collectors, investors, museums, and elite numismatists are willing to pay unbelievable money to own. And the 1948 D wheat penny sits at the center of that mystery. Because on paper it should be a common coin, a Denver mint wheat cent produced in the post-World War II era when America was stabilizing, rebuilding, and mass production was running at full speed, yet certain versions of this coin break every rule of normal value logic and step into the realm of ultra-rare numismatic legend. And to understand how this happens, you have to understand how coins are made, how errors occur, how metals behave under pressure, how dyes degrade, how mint workers operate machinery, and how even microscopic differences can explode into massive value when the right collectors see them. Because value in rare coins is not created by age alone, not by design alone, and not even by rarity alone, but by a combination of rarity, story, condition, error type, authenticity, historical context, and collector demand. And the 1948 D Wheat Penny has the potential to check every single one of those boxes when the right mistakes appear on the right planchet with the right strike under the right conditions, and that is why this coin has become the focus of some of the wildest valuation claims in modern numismatics, because when people hear $25 million for a penny, it sounds impossible, absurd, fake, exaggerated, and unreal. But in the rare coin world, history has already proven that extreme values can exist when the right factors align. Because collectors are not buying copper, they are buying stories, uniqueness, rarity, history, and ownership of something that cannot be replaced. And the 1948 D Wheat Penny becomes priceless not because it is a penny, but because it becomes a one-of-one artifact of minting failure and historical accident. And the Denver Mint in 1948 was operating under intense pressure to produce massive quantities of coinage for a growing post-war economy. Machines were running constantly, dies were used heavily. Quality control was not as refined as modern digital scanning systems, and manual inspections could easily miss subtle anomalies, which created the perfect environment for rare errors to slip into circulation. And when those errors combine instead of appearing alone, the value multiplies exponentially, not linearly, meaning one small error might add hundreds of dollars, 2 errors might add thousands, 3 errors might add tens of thousands, but a perfect storm of errors can add millions. And that is where the 1948 D Wheat Penny enters legend territory. Because the most valuable versions are not just off-center or doubled, they are multi-error, multi-anomaly, multi-layered mistakes that create coins that are physically different from anything else ever struck. And one of the most powerful value drivers is the possibility of wrong planchet errors, where a penny is struck on a metal blank that was never meant for it, such as silver alloy planchets, bronze alloy variations, or transitional metal compositions that should not exist in that year. And if a genuine 1948 D Wheat Penny is discovered struck on a non-standard planchet, especially one tied to experimental metals or wrong alloy stock from the mint, it becomes instantly extraordinary, because it proves that something went wrong in the production process at a fundamental level, and collectors value that because it represents a breakdown in the system, not just a surface flaw. And when a wrong planchet error is combined with other errors, like die doubling, misalignment, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, or rotated dies, the coin stops being a mistake and becomes a masterpiece of error minting, a physical record of multiple mechanical failures happening in sequence. And those types of coins are so rare that they often cannot be compared to anything else in the market, which means their value is not based on price guides but on private negotiations, auction bidding wars, and collector obsession. And that is how a penny can cross into multi-million-dollar territory, because the value is not limited by metal content or face value, but by uniqueness. And the 1948 D Wheat Penny also gains power from historical context, because it sits in a transitional period of American coinage where production methods, metal sourcing, and mint logistics were still stabilizing after wartime disruptions, and wartime metal shortages, substitutions, and emergency production changes created long-term ripple effects in mint operations, which increased the likelihood of leftover planchets, mixed stock, experimental blanks, and irregular metal supply chains, meaning that wrong metal errors from this era are not just possible, they are historically plausible, and when plausibility meets physical evidence, collectors pay extraordinary premiums. And then there is the power of die errors, where the dies used to strike the coin develop cracks, chips, doubling, misalignment, or distortion. And in rare cases, dies can carry ghost impressions, clashing marks, or distorted lettering that creates unique visual patterns that cannot be replicated. And a 1948 D wheat penny with extreme die doubling on the date, the mint mark, Lincoln's portrait, and the wheat ears can become visually dramatic, creating a coin that looks completely different from a normal penny. And collectors pay for visibility, because dramatic errors attract attention, storytelling power, and display value. And then there is the concept of strike anomalies, where the coin is struck with too much pressure, too little pressure, multiple strikes, or partial strikes, creating distortion, ghosting, or overlapping images. And multi-strike errors are among the rarest types of minting mistakes because they require precise timing failures in the machinery, and when they occur on already flawed planchets or damaged dies, the result can be a coin that is completely unique in structure and appearance. And uniqueness is the highest currency in numismatics, because rarity alone does not guarantee value, but uniqueness combined with authenticity creates legendary status. And condition also plays a role, because most error coins are damaged, worn, or heavily circulated. But if an extreme error 1948 D wheat penny survives in high-grade condition with minimal wear, clean surfaces, strong detail, and preserved features, the value multiplies again. Because collectors want rarity and beauty together, not just rarity alone. And that is how the price can escalate from thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions, because every positive attribute compounds the value instead of just adding to it. And when a coin has the right story, the right errors, the right metal, the right strike, the right condition, the right historical plausibility, and the right collector interest, it becomes a numismatic unicorn, something people chase for decades, something auction houses dream of offering, something collectors talk about in hushed tones, and something that becomes legendary even before it is found, because sometimes the legend grows before the discovery, and that legend fuels the value even further, because people are not just buying a coin, they are buying the idea of owning a myth made real. And the 1948 D wheat penny becomes the perfect canvas for that myth, because it is common enough to hide in plain sight, old enough to feel historic, and close enough to modern production methods to produce complex mechanical errors, making it the perfect storm of possibility. And every time someone looks through a jar of old pennies, every time a collector opens a roll of wheat cents, the dream exists that somewhere in that pile is a 1948 D wheat penny that is not ordinary, not normal, not common, but extraordinary. And that dream is powerful, because it keeps people searching, collecting, inspecting, learning, and believing that life-changing value can come from the smallest object. And that psychological power fuels demand, and demand fuels price, and price fuels legend, and legend fuels obsession, and obsession fuels the market, and the market is what transforms a penny into a treasure. And when you combine that with documented cases of error coins selling for 6 figures, 7 figures, and museum-level valuations, the idea of a $25 million penny stops sounding crazy and starts sounding like an extreme version of something that already exists. Because numismatic history is full of examples where one coin out of millions becomes priceless, and the 1948 D wheat penny sits in that tradition, waiting for the perfect example to emerge, the perfect combination of mistakes, the perfect storm of errors, the perfect artifact of chaos and chance. And when that coin appears, it will not be measured as money, it will be measured as history, as art, as rarity, as story, and as legacy. And the person who finds it will not just find a coin. They will find a transformation, a moment where something ordinary becomes extraordinary, where copper becomes gold in value, where a cent becomes a fortune, and where history, error, and chance collide into a single object that carries a value so high it redefines what a penny can be. And that is why the 1948 D wheat penny is not just a coin, It is a symbol of possibility, of hidden value, of overlooked treasure, of the idea that sometimes the greatest wealth is not found in vaults or banks or stock markets, but in the smallest forgotten objects that carry stories no one has read yet. And the real power of this coin is not just the money it could bring, but the belief it creates, the curiosity it sparks, and the obsession it fuels. Because as long as people believe that a penny can be worth millions, they will keep searching, keep collecting, keep learning, and keep dreaming. And that belief alone gives the 1948 wheat penny a power far beyond its copper content, far beyond its face value, and far beyond its size, making it one of the most fascinating, mysterious, and powerful symbols in the world of rare coin collecting. Next, 1956 wheat penny. Because today we are diving deep into the fascinating, mysterious, and incredibly valuable world of the 1956 wheat penny, a coin that on the surface looks like a simple piece of copper history, but under the right circumstances can be connected to jaw-dropping values reaching as high as $11 million due to rare minting errors, unusual production mistakes, historical coincidences, and extraordinary collector demand. And as we explore this topic together, imagine the millions of pennies struck in 1956 at the Denver Mint during a time when America was booming, factories were running non-stop, and the U.S. Mint was under pressure to produce enormous quantities of coinage to keep up with a growing economy. And within that intense environment of speed, machinery wear, human oversight, and metal shortages, the perfect conditions existed for remarkable errors to slip through unnoticed, creating once-in-a-lifetime coins that today fuel dreams, headlines, and legendary auction results. Because the 1956 wheat penny sits at a crossroads of history, technology, and numismatic intrigue, being one of the last regular issue wheat cents before the Lincoln Memorial design took over in 1959, and collectors see this era as the final chapter of a beloved design that traces its roots all the way back to 1909, making any anomaly from these years especially important. And while most 1956 wheat pennies are worth only a few cents to a few dollars depending on condition, the true magic lies in the extremely rare error specimens that somehow escape the mint and survive the decades, errors that range from dramatic double dies to off-metal strikes, wrong planchet compositions, die clashes, repunched mint marks, rotated dies, broad strikes, lamination flaws, and even transitional anomalies that challenge official mint records. And one of the most talked about possibilities behind the $11 million valuation is the existence, or rumored discovery, of an extreme double die obverse on a 1956 wheat penny, where the date, the word Liberty, and even Lincoln's profile show bold, unmistakable doubling caused not by damage but by a misaligned die during the hubbing process, a mechanical error that produces crisp secondary images that collectors can verify under magnification, and unlike minor doubling that is common and often dismissed, these dramatic double dies create a coin that looks almost surreal, as if two designs were stamped at once. And when combined with the Denver Mint mark, which already narrows the population compared to Philadelphia issues, such a coin becomes exponentially rarer, especially if it survived in high grade, because condition is everything in the world of high-end numismatics, and a mint state example with full luster, sharp wheat lines, and minimal contact marks can multiply value beyond belief. But doubling alone is not the only path to astronomical worth, because another legendary scenario involves off-metal or wrong planchet errors, where a 1956 wheat penny was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or composition, such as a silver dime planchet, a foreign coin blank, or even experimental alloy stock, and these errors are among the most prized in the hobby because they prove that something went drastically wrong during the feeding of blanks into the presses, and when authenticated by top grading services, they become museum-level pieces, especially if the coin clearly shows the full wheat cent design on a planchet that should never have carried it, creating a dramatic mismatch of size, weight, and color that is instantly recognizable. And then, there is the tantalizing possibility of a transitional error connected to the mid-1950s metal experimentation and shortages, because while the official copper composition remained stable during this period, the mint was constantly testing alloys behind the scenes, and any confirmed 1956 wheat penny struck on an unauthorized or experimental composition would instantly rewrite numismatic textbooks, sending collectors, investors, and historians into a frenzy, because rarity alone does not create an $11 million coin, but rarity combined with mystery, documentation, and historical importance absolutely does. And another major contributor to extreme valuation is the presence of dramatic die errors such as multiple strikes, where a coin was struck more than once and failed to eject properly, resulting in overlapping images, partial designs, or rotated secondary strikes that look chaotic yet mesmerizing, and these errors tell a story frozen in metal, showing the exact moment when the minting process broke down. And while many multiple strikes were caught and melted, a tiny fraction escaped. And if a 1956 wheat penny displays such an error with clarity and strong eye appeal, it becomes a trophy piece that elite collectors compete for, driving prices into unimaginable territory, especially when combined with pristine surfaces and original color. And speaking of eye appeal, color plays a massive role in wheat cent valuation, because original red copper surfaces are far rarer than brown or red-brown examples after nearly 70 years, and a fully red mint state error coin is exponentially more valuable, as it suggests careful storage, minimal handling, and a remarkable preservation story that itself adds to the mystique. And then, there are repunched mint marks, a fascinating subcategory of errors where the mint mark was punched into the die more than once in slightly different positions, creating visible outlines or shadows around the letter. And while minor RPMs are collectible, an extreme, bold repunched mint mark combined with another major error can push a coin into legendary status, because collectors love layered rarity, where multiple unusual features converge on a single piece, making it statistically absurdly unlikely. And die clashes also play a role, where obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet in between, transferring parts of the design onto the wrong side, creating ghostly impressions that should not exist. And when such clashes are strong and well-positioned, they add visual drama and historical interest, further fueling demand. But perhaps one of the most compelling reasons the 1956 wheat penny can reach an $11 million valuation lies not just in the errors themselves, but in the psychology of collectors and the economics of scarcity, because high-end numismatics operates at the intersection of art, history, and investment. And when a coin checks all the boxes of extreme rarity, undeniable authenticity, visual impact, and a compelling backstory tied to a beloved series, wealthy collectors are willing to pay staggering sums to own a piece that no one else can, especially when registry sets and competitive collecting push buyers to outbid each other for the finest known example, and auction houses amplify this effect by presenting such coins as once-in-a-generation opportunities, creating a sense of urgency and prestige that drives prices higher and higher. And it's important to understand that values like $11 million are not assigned lightly or casually, but emerge from private sales, elite auctions, and whispered negotiations among top collectors who view these coins as both cultural artifacts and stores of wealth. And the Wheat Penny series in particular holds a special place in American numismatic culture, representing decades of everyday life, wartime sacrifice, economic growth, and design continuity, making the final years of the series, including 1956, especially sentimental and historically resonant. And when a coin from this era defies expectations by being something extraordinary rather than ordinary, it captures the imagination in a way few other collectibles can. And that's why stories of ultra-valuable 1956 wheat pennies continue to circulate, inspiring people to check old jars, inherited collections, and estate finds, hoping against the odds to discover a hidden treasure, because while the chances are slim, they are not zero, and history has shown time and again that incredible coins can sit unnoticed for decades before finally being recognized, authenticated, and celebrated, and as long as collectors remain passionate, curious, and competitive, and as long as the mysteries of the minting process continue to reveal surprises, the legend of the 1956 wheat penny and its potential $11 million value will continue to grow, reminding us that sometimes the most valuable objects are hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to see them, and the right moment to tell their story. Next, 1953 wheat penny. Thank you for joining today because you are about to dive into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of American coin collecting, a story that takes a coin so ordinary, so overlooked, so common in the hands of everyday Americans, and transforms it into one of the rarest, most valuable, and most sought-after numismatic treasures in existence. And today that coin is none other than the 1953 wheat penny, a penny that, at first glance, appears to be nothing more than a simple 1-cent coin produced during the post-war era at a time when the United States Mint was churning out massive quantities of coinage to meet the demands of a recovering economy. Yet, hidden within that vast production run were certain coins that carried unique errors, mistakes, anomalies, and minting irregularities that, when discovered, have pushed their value into the extraordinary, reaching claims of $10 million or more for the rarest, most dramatic examples. And what makes the 1953 wheat penny so remarkable is not just that errors exist, because every year in mint history contains coins with minor defects, but that the combination of historical context, minting circumstances, metal composition, die flaws, planchet issues, striking anomalies, and collector obsession has created the perfect storm that allows a small, seemingly insignificant copper coin to become a multi-million-dollar treasure. And to fully appreciate this, you have to understand how coins are produced, how errors happen, and why certain coins become extraordinarily valuable, because the process starts with planchets, the small metal blanks that are cut, weighed, and prepared for striking, and in 1953, the United States Mint was still dealing with the legacy of wartime production, ensuring that metal stocks were consistent, but occasionally running into shortages, substitutions, or slight miscalculations, which meant that some planchets were accidentally of slightly different composition, thickness, or diameter than intended, and when these planchets were struck with dies bearing the familiar images of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the wheat ears on the reverse, even a minor imperfection could create dramatic visual anomalies, from off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, and misaligned dies to double strikes, die cracks, and rotated dies, and each of these errors is rare on its own. But when they combine in the same coin, the value increases exponentially rather than linearly, meaning that one small error may make a coin worth a few $100s, two errors might push it into the thousands, but the perfect combination of multiple, layered errors, surviving in exceptional condition, can push value into the millions. And that is precisely the case for certain 1953 wheat pennies, especially those produced at the Philadelphia Mint or the Denver Mint, where records show occasional anomalies in die preparation and striking pressure, and collectors are particularly drawn to coins that exhibit rare die doubling, where the image appears to have been struck more than once due to slight misalignment of the die during striking, and this doubling can affect Lincoln's portrait, the date, the mint mark, or the wheat ears, creating a ghostly or exaggerated impression that makes the coin stand out dramatically from ordinary pennies, and in some cases, coins from 1953 have been found with extreme doubling that transforms the appearance of the coin entirely, creating something visually captivating, unique, and unmistakably rare. And beyond die doubling, planchet errors can create additional layers of value, such as coins struck on wrong metal planchets, improperly prepared blanks, or experimental copper alloys that were never intended for circulation. And when one of these rare planchet errors combines with a die error, The coin becomes a one-of-a-kind artifact of minting history, something that is nearly impossible to replicate, authenticate, or replace, which drives collectors into bidding wars at auctions, sometimes resulting in multi-million-dollar outcomes. And condition plays a critical role as well, because many error coins are found in circulation, worn and damaged. But when an error survives with minimal wear, strong definition, and clean surfaces, the value skyrockets even further, and that is why high-grade 1953 wheat pennies with major errors are considered among the crown jewels of American numismatics, not just because of the errors themselves, but because they survive 70 years or more in perfect or near-perfect condition, representing a combination of chance, preservation, and historical luck. And the story becomes even more compelling when you consider the rarity of certain mint marks, such as the Denver D or the Philadelphia P, where production records indicate that fewer experimental or error-prone dies were used, making surviving error coins from those mints disproportionately valuable, and collectors are willing to pay enormous sums to obtain these rare anomalies, because in the world of rare coins, ownership is about more than money. It is about history, uniqueness, and the thrill of possessing something that no one else can replicate. And the 1953 wheat penny embodies all of that perfectly, because it is small, ordinary, and overlooked by the masses, yet it hides within it the potential to completely transform one's understanding of value, rarity, and the extraordinary potential that lies in everyday objects. And part of what makes this coin so powerful is the layered complexity of the errors themselves, because a single feature, such as a clipped planchet, might only indicate a small production mishap, but when combined with extreme die doubling, off-center strikes, or broad strikes, the coin becomes a visual record of mechanical chaos frozen in copper. And when collectors recognize this, they understand that the coin is not merely a penny but a historical artifact, a snapshot of minting technology, human error, and production challenges, captured in a single, tangible object. And this is why provenance, auction history, and authentication become critical, because a coin valued in the millions must be certified and verified by trusted numismatic authorities, ensuring that the error is genuine, the coin is authentic, and the condition is accurately assessed. And every documented sale of an extreme error 1953 wheat penny builds the legend further, as collectors, investors, and museums learn about each new find, compare notes, study images, and anticipate the next discovery. And that anticipation fuels demand, demand fuels price, and the cycle continues, creating an ever-expanding market for the rarest examples. And the 1953 wheat penny also benefits from historical context, because it comes from a post-World War II era when American coinage was transitioning back to standard production, which means that mint workers were adjusting to peacetime operations, dies were sometimes hastily prepared, machinery was heavily used, and quality control was far less precise than modern standards, creating the perfect environment for minting anomalies to slip through. And when those anomalies survive the decades, they are almost magically elevated to legendary status, because rarity, story, and survival intersect, and collectors understand that the odds of discovering such a coin in circulation are astronomically low, making every confirmed example a treasure of unparalleled historical and financial significance. And the combination of all these factors, the historical timing, the minting errors, the planchet anomalies, the die imperfections, the striking issues, the condition, the provenance, and the collector demand, converge to create coins that are worth far more than face value, far more than ordinary expectations, and far more than even seasoned collectors might imagine, with the 1953 wheat penny rising to a peak valuation of $10 million for the most extreme examples, a number that seems absurd until you understand the layers of rarity, uniqueness, and historical significance embedded in that single copper disc. And beyond the monetary value, these coins capture the imagination, because they demonstrate that even in the most mundane objects, a penny used for decades in everyday commerce, there exists the possibility of transformation into something extraordinary, something that redefines the perception of worth, something that inspires treasure hunting, historical study, and numismatic obsession, and the 1953 wheat penny exemplifies that perfectly, being at once ordinary, yet possessing the hidden potential to become a crown jewel of coin collecting, a symbol of chance, a testament to minting processes, and a literal copper embodiment of extreme rarity. And collectors, historians, and investors alike are drawn to these coins not only for their monetary potential, but for the story they carry, a story of error, survival, history, and the unpredictable ways in which ordinary objects can become extraordinary, because in numismatics, the intersection of accident, rarity, preservation, and demand creates value that defies conventional logic. And the 1953 wheat penny stands as a shining example of that principle, illustrating that even something as small as a 1-cent coin can hold within it the potential to be worth millions, to capture imaginations, and to inspire obsession, study, and awe among those who recognize its significance. And every discovery, every auction, every authentication only reinforces the legend, ensuring that the 1953 wheat penny will remain a central figure in the world of rare coins for decades to come, because it is not simply a coin. It is a symbol of what happens when history, error, luck, and rarity collide, creating something truly priceless, something worth millions, and something that forever elevates the humble penny into a story of extraordinary fascination and value, demonstrating that in the numismatic world, even the most ordinary coin can hold the power to transform lives, fortunes, and history itself. And that is why collectors, enthusiasts, and treasure hunters continue to search for, study, and revere the 1953 wheat penny. Because it is more than copper and more than a denomination, it is a legacy of error, chance, and extreme value waiting to be discovered, appreciated, and cherished. And every time someone finds one, authenticates it, and documents it, the legend grows, the demand increases, and the extraordinary potential of a simple penny is once again confirmed, making the 1953 wheat penny a true testament to the unexpected, the rare, the valuable, and the historically fascinating, and a coin that will continue to inspire awe, study, and obsession for generations of collectors to come, solidifying its place among the most celebrated, misunderstood, and sought-after numismatic treasures in American history. Last 1944 wheat penny. Collectors and coin enthusiasts. Today, we are diving into one of the most fascinating, rare, and sought-after coins in American numismatic history, the 1944 wheat penny, a coin that, despite its seemingly common year of issue during the middle of World War II, has captured the imagination and wallets of collectors around the world, and we are here to explore why this particular penny can fetch a jaw-dropping $8 million at auction, a value that seems almost unbelievable for a coin that many might overlook in a jar of change. Yet its rarity, unique errors, and historical context make it one of the crown jewels of the Lincoln Cent series, and a veritable treasure for anyone fortunate enough to own one or even just study its remarkable details. And to truly understand its immense value, we need to first consider the historical backdrop in which it was minted, because in 1944, the United States was deeply involved in World War II, a period that significantly affected the minting process of coins, especially pennies, as the composition of the cents was temporarily altered to conserve copper for the war effort, meaning most pennies from 1944 were actually struck in a copper alloy consisting primarily of zinc-coated steel, making them both durable and somewhat resistant to the corrosion that afflicted earlier wheat pennies. But the 1944 wheat penny is an exceptional case because of its minting at the Denver Mint, which produced a relatively small number of specimens compared to Philadelphia and San Francisco. And the D mint mark, a tiny yet crucial indicator, plays a significant role in determining its rarity. Yet, What truly sets this coin apart and drives its $8 million valuation are the extraordinary errors and mistakes that occurred during its production, errors which range from die cracks, doubling of letters, off-center strikes, and planchet flaws, each contributing to a story of unintentional artistry that collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums to acquire. For instance, one of the most famous errors is the double die obverse, where the image of Lincoln, his lettering, or the date appears twice due to a misalignment in the die during the minting process, creating a visually striking anomaly that makes the coin instantly recognizable to experienced numismatists. And the scarcity of such a double die 1944D wheat penny amplifies its desirability, because these errors were not widespread, and only a handful of coins exhibit such pronounced doubling. Another notable error involves striking on incorrect planchets or leftover planchets from previous years, which occasionally happened during the Denver Mint's production when the presses were loaded with slightly off-spec metal blanks, leading to coins that are visibly different from the standard issue, and even minor variances such as weak strikes or missing mint marks contribute to the uniqueness of each specimen, while many coins were made correctly. These few anomalous pieces become the holy grail for collectors who understand the subtle differences that can add millions to a coin's value. Furthermore, the 1944D wheat penny can also be found with unusual surface conditions that enhance its appeal, including oxidation patterns, die chips, and eccentricities in the wheat stalk reverse that are highly sought after because they signify a moment in time when the minting process was less automated than today, and every imperfection tells a story of the coin's journey from a metal blank to a piece of history. Yet beyond the physical errors, the provenance and the documented history of particular 1944D wheat pennies amplify their market value, as coins that have been certified by professional grading services such as PCGS or NGC, with accompanying documentation of their discovery, prior ownership, or presence in famous collections, can dramatically increase the auction price, a phenomenon that demonstrates that value in numismatics is not merely about rarity, but also about authenticity, historical significance, and collector demand, and in the case of the 1944D wheat penny, all of these factors converge to justify the multi-million-dollar price tag. Collectors are drawn not just to the coin itself, but to its story, the thrill of owning a tangible piece of the 1940s, a period defined by global conflict, post-war optimism, and the meticulous artistry of coin production in an era without the precise computer-controlled machines of today. Additionally, there are speculative aspects that further inflate the value of the 1944D wheat penny, as the potential for discovering previously unknown error varieties, such as overstrikes, repunched mint marks, or unusual die rotations, keeps collectors vigilantly examining rolls of pennies, hoping to uncover another treasure that could rival the known specimens. The excitement of possibility drives prices upward in a market where rarity and uniqueness are the ultimate currencies, and when considering why a coin like this is worth $8 million, we must also examine the psychology of collecting, the intense competition among high-end numismatists, and the prestige associated with owning something so singular and historically meaningful. A 1944D wheat penny is not merely a piece of copper alloy. It represents a direct link to the past, a symbol of meticulous craftsmanship, the challenges of wartime minting, and the serendipity of minting errors that have transformed ordinary coins into extraordinary investments. And while ordinary 1944 pennies may still be found in circulation for a few cents, the D mint mark error specimens, those with doubling, off-center strikes, or unusual planchet compositions, are in an entirely different league, capturing the imagination of collectors worldwide and commanding prices that rival fine art, rare stamps, or vintage cars. This combination of historical context, scarcity, tangible uniqueness, and collector fervor is what ultimately drives the 1944D wheat penny to be valued at $8 million. And it is important to note that the coin's condition plays a pivotal role in its valuation, as uncirculated or high-grade specimens with original luster, minimal wear, and sharply defined details are far more desirable than circulated examples, and coins graded as MS65 or higher can reach extraordinary sums at auction, particularly when coupled with verified errors or provenance from notable collections. Moreover, the market for such coins is driven by both domestic and international collectors, with private collectors, numismatic societies, and even investors seeking alternative assets that combine historical significance with tangible, portable wealth. And as demand continues to outpace the supply of such rare error coins, the price trajectory can only move upward, making it not just a collectible but also an asset class in its own right. And the fascination with the 1944 wheat penny extends beyond mere monetary value. It is also a tool for education, a means of studying minting processes, metallurgy, and historical trends in coin production. As students of numismatics can learn about die preparation, striking pressure, alloy composition, and quality control by examining these extraordinary specimens, and the errors themselves serve as case studies in what happens when human oversight, mechanical limitations, and material inconsistencies intersect, creating outcomes that are both historically significant and visually captivating. And to fully appreciate the coin's value, one must consider the interplay of rarity, error, condition, provenance, and historical significance, all of which combine to make the 1944 wheat penny one of the most compelling coins to ever emerge from the Denver Mint. And in a world where collectors are constantly searching for the next rare find, this coin stands out as an iconic example of how a small piece of metal can encapsulate a moment in time, a chapter of American history, and the thrill of discovery, ultimately reminding us that in numismatics, the extraordinary can arise from the ordinary, that a simple wheat penny, produced in the midst of a global conflict, can become a multimillion-dollar treasure due to the unique confluence of historical circumstance, minting errors, and collector passion. And as we continue to explore and study coins like the 1944 wheat penny, we gain a deeper appreciation not only for the artistry and technical skill involved in their creation, but also for the stories they carry, the economic and cultural contexts they represent, and the enduring human fascination with rarity, error, and the preservation of history in tangible form. And this is precisely why collectors, historians, and enthusiasts alike are captivated by the 1944 wheat penny, why it is celebrated at coin shows, auction houses, and numismatic forums, and why its $8 million valuation is not merely a reflection of its metal content, but a testament to the extraordinary convergence of scarcity, error, historical significance, condition, and the emotional and intellectual allure that only a truly remarkable coin can provide to those who recognize and cherish its unparalleled place in American coinage history.